this is going to be the best Damn League Show episode, whatever, like 9 or something, 9 or 10. It's be around that match.
It's got to be more than that. We had 8 for just regular season.
Could it be 11? Could be 11. Yeah. Whatever. But anyway, we're here. The split's over. G2 won. I know obviously now people are like, what year is it? Yeah, we all know the jokes. Like we all get the jokes. Yes, G2 won, even though it's 2022. We've got YoungBuck here as our guest. Now you might think, bit of an amateur move, isn't it? Booking 2 XL people as the guests back-to-back. No, because the plot twist was we didn't talk about XL with Nelson, did we? We just talked about the playoffs that were ongoing. Whereas actually, maybe at the end of this episode, when we talk about the playoff teams, maybe we'll get into some stuff about XL with YoungBuck here. Not least because it's his team, innit? He's the one that's been there forever. So we'll just start out here. We'll start. Let's just start with the final, boys. We'll start with the champion and work our way back. Because to me, like if we talk around that, we're going to inevitably veer into G2 and what they did and why they were the best. So it's better to just start with that. So YoungBuck, let's just start here, mate. I've heard. If you listen to the G2 people, they now retcon history that like they always thought in scrims they were like the best team and they just couldn't make it happen in the game. And they've even implied that like maybe some of the other teams also thought they were like some of the best. But I think that feels like they've sort of massaged the story, mate. Until last weekend, I don't know anyone who thought G2 was winning the LEC, mate. I think most people thought it was going to be a Rogue FNATIC rematch in the final. And almost everyone, I would imagine, picked one of those 2 teams to win. So what was your sentiment as someone who was in the playoff bracket, maybe even practiced them early, was seeing the scrims? What was your expectations for G2 coming into the weekend?
Coming into the weekend, I had relatively low hopes for them. But what they did say about scrims has been true, I think. So we beat them once in a scrim somewhere in February, and apparently it got a few people talking between each team. And they told us that we were the first team to ever beat them in a scrim set. So that's December, January, February. So that's shortly before playoffs.
And did you play 5 games in the scrim set?
Yes, so we went like 3-2. So apparently they had been stomping scrims a lot, and they had beaten us a few times earlier. So I want to believe that. It's just what I felt in scrims is that they were winning a lot of games by having really great draft pivots. And on stage, teams prepare for G2 specifically, and they are because in the scrims you're not always drafting to beat the team you're scrimming.
Yeah, you're drafting for yourself.
Yeah, what you want to play. Yeah. Sure, yeah.
So there was a very big contrast between G2 in scrims and G2 on stage.
Right.
So I always felt going into playoffs, there was a really clear favorite top 2 in Rogue and FNATIC, and then the other 4 teams were just going to fight for the 3rd place, basically. But the G2 in scrims ended up showing up. So it is very surprising given their roster, not so much given how the scrims have been going throughout the split.
Obviously, anyone who's watched the show knows we didn't have this. Like, this wasn't even on the radar that G2 could 3-0 everyone and win the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that 3-0s would make sense. I mean, I could see like maybe somebody being like G2 can win a close series. Like, so I had FNATIC beating G2 3-2. That was my prediction.
Right.
Actually, I had Rogue beating them 3-0, but FNATIC I had them beating them 3-2. I thought that was going to be really contested. But I didn't think that they really had that much of a chance to win because of like the first series that they played. When you look at the first series they played, sure, they left LeBlanc open. They obviously got that ban, but it looked like FNATIC was like on a different level. The only game they won in that series was the one where Hilly just went like 0-9. And I didn't think that was going to be the standard. That ended up being the standard of Hilly's play throughout like most of playoffs, but I didn't think that was going to be Hilly's standard. I kind of thought that he was going to level up. If I were to look at the series and I was like, who's going to be the Renata player in this series? I would have said that like Hilly's going to be like, that's his champion. You know, he was the one that brought that into LEC.
Yes.
He's like that was part of the reason why people had him in the MVP contest. It was like, what the fuck? Like this guy, like, what are you doing to this guy? If you pick Rakan, he's going to pick Zillion. If you let him last pick and it's a good Rakan game, he's going to pick Rakan. If you play a range support, he's going to pick Pyke. If you play like an engage comp, he's going to pick Renata. It was like he had like the fucking perfect like mastermind plan for everything. And that's why I thought that coming into the series, I thought FNATIC was actually going to go red side versus G2. So like for me, G2 was the team that like I just thought was the most limited, especially if you consider the week coming into this. Like, sure, they did 3-0 Vitality, but like that 3-0, they were losing bot lane.
And Vitality looked like shit in that series, let's be real. Like, they were terrible.
And Vitality even threw games, and Vitality had leads in the early game, so nothing told me in that previous week that they were going to be good. Like, sure, they did stop Misfits, but I thought anyone was going to stop Misfits. I think it's arguable that Misfits was the worst team in playoffs. Like,
yes.
So
it's not arguable, they are.
Okay.
They really are.
Well, you're eliminated. The first thing I thought when XL lost to Vitality is I wish I could see XL play Misfits. I reckon they'd win. I think Misfits was the 6th best team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
that would be the argument. It would be XL. I was trying to dance around it, but YoungBuck. But that would be the argument. It's XL or Misfits for that spot. So even though they did stomp him, I didn't really take that much away from it. I'm like, yeah, whoever played against like Misfits, like I predicted G2 3-0. I would have predicted Vitality 3-0 if they made it. Anyone I think is going to 3-0 Misfits in that situation. I predicted Rogue 3-0, even though they 3-1. So going into this weekend, I actually didn't think that G2 was going to have such a prep advantage. And it seemed like G2 just had better drafts in almost every single game. It just felt like they came out of the gate. They were just stomping teams in draft. They got everything they wanted. Enemy team got nothing to counter it. And I was really surprised at how teams didn't comp around what G2 was really good at. I thought if at the very least, if you're going to be leaving Ahri up, you're going to be playing something like Vex or Veigar or one of these standard counters that we see around the world. But it seemed like it was like, take your Ahri and let's see if Caps is really good. And Caps just showed up. And I think Caps had the best weekend that he's had in maybe like a year and a half, I would say, since 2020. I mean, this is like the level of Caps of old. But I mean, if you don't see it for a year and a half, you're not going to predict that to be like a constant level of performance. So I think that just G2, all the players like stepped up slightly. I think their mental was way better though, and their drafts were way better, specifically in the first 2 games of both series.
Sure. I definitely want to dive into some of the drafts. But actually, YoungBuck, I want to get your take on that. Obviously, you have coached Caps when he was also Prime Caps and he was Epic, etc. Do you think it was noticeable, the difference? Because I know some people were even putting it down to finals, crowd, obviously more familiar circumstances the last couple of years. This was more in line with the Caps we're supposed to see, right? Did you also agree the take that he was a bit sort of subdued this split?
I think he was a little bit subdued, but for me, Caps is a player that if you ask me to build a team and select a mid laner, even after this split with Vetio popping off, I would have taken Caps any day just because I know what Caps can do.
Would you have taken him over Humanoid?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's the one that I think most people would. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I know that Caps had a pretty rough year last year, but I think I had a lot to do with things that also happened within the team and things that didn't have much to do with gameplay. So I think if he has a good environment, and I think G2 signing someone like Dylan helps a lot because they had a really good relationship back in 2018, 2017. I think if you provide Caps with a good team atmosphere and keep him happy, then he'll perform better than any other mid laner.
There's one thing I wanted to talk about is I thought a way we could segue into draft is obviously the focus, because he carried the games, is like the Caps angle of like Caps is back and he like carried in front of a crowd and he's clutch, he's never lost the finals. To me, this actually shows how when you draft around players, specifically for your players, you can make them super powerful, because here's the part fans aren't bothering to shade in here. Until this weekend, I've watched all the major regions this year. Until this weekend, there was no threat of a Western player playing Ahri and shitting on you in a playoff series. That wasn't going to happen. In fact, Ahri was a trap pick for a lot of Western teams. So that one of the things I noticed was interesting about this was, first of all, notice in this final, Caps isn't on any of the shit that was subdued. He's not playing Orianna and Lissandra. No, dude, he's on Silas, he's on the Ahri, and you can see from the way that G2 practiced, Dylan Falco even said this on Summoning Insight, he essentially implied that, like, at one point they even stopped, like, playing Ahri in scrims because it was just too good, and they didn't want the other teams to know that, like, Caps is a monster on it. So, like, I think it's also the fact that, like, you couldn't predict these drafts. Like, you couldn't come in as Rogue or FNATIC and know, like, they're going to draft this way. And in fact, for their team, this is a mega draft. Like, as you say, Dom, they don't have any counters ready for them. Like, no one had the Veigar, no one had anything. It seemed like to stop.
They do have the counters, but the counters are dog shit. It's like, here, we're going to play Lucian Rumble into you. We're going to play Lucian Rumble, 0 CC into Ahri. The Ahri's going to be fucking unleashed, can dash around, doesn't have any threat, nothing to worry about. I mean, the thing that makes Ahri difficult to play into Vex and Veigar is they both have this long fucking CC. I mean, if Ahri dashes in, you drop the cage on her. It's like she has to waste a dash charge just to get around the cage, or just maybe even 2 just to like position into the fight, which is why you see this as like a main counter a lot of the time. And then Vex is the same type of thing where you have this fear that it like makes it so difficult to play, and you have the potential to get one shot. If you get hit by the R or something, you can get absolutely one shot by a Vex, or you can get one shot by the Vex and the jungler within the CC. So I was kind of disappointed in how teams adapted, because I thought, like, just ban the Ahri, man. Like, he's clearly fucking insane on Ahri. Just ban it. But if you're gonna let it through, like, it can't be Lucian. Like, Larsen's Lucian is not stopping the Caps Ahri. I just don't believe it.
Also, I don't know if people saw this, but a fan actually did a screenshot, and it's right. If you look in game 1 of that Lucian versus Ari game, one of the reasons Jankos gets the gank off is he perfectly goes around like the fog of war, just outside a ward. So Larson thinks, because he has a ward on his side of the river, like on his side of the lane, he thinks that he can just about see all the river, so he thinks he can't be ganked, and that's why he played up, and he died like immediately at the beginning of the game, and the kill went on the Ari, if people remember, I think off the top of my head, right? And it was already rolling. What did you think of this like draft pivot they took here, YoungBuck? Because it sounds like whatever they did in practice, they came in with a different sort of almost pool of champions to the other teams.
I think Ari in particular was not something that a lot of EU teams were scrimming with or preparing for. It was just like a very niche pick. If opponents had Hecarim in the team, then you could see some Ari. But other than that, I don't think any team could have seen it coming. And just generally speaking, I think G2 always has this flexibility where they were always playing around top lane, but you have caps on your team. You can always play mid with a mid jungle, and that is something that G2 used to be really good at, like caps. And whenever you would scout the old G2, it was always everything was about mid jungle support. So I'm not too surprised that they actually pivoted away from just playing through top lane and tried to be more flexible.
Yeah. Actually, a very interesting thing, Dom, is obviously another player that's a veteran that was on the team. Again, it's not really a surprise that Jankos could win the LEC, right? Mate, he just lived up to the billing in these playoffs. Like, I saw Dylan Falco even said he thinks game 2 is like an example of where if you're the coach, you know it's like a masterpiece by a player, but you won't see it in the server. He says in game 2 of that series, basically, Jankos just shot called that entire game, and it was like, it just made miracles happen, basically. So it sounds like he just fucking locked into this meta, mate.
I have the same take as I had last time on the show. I think he's the best jungler in LEC. I did not drink the Malrong Kool-Aid, even though Malrong was fucking...
That aged pretty badly for those fans that are hating on us. You know, I'm sure you saw that, Dom, where everyone was hating that take. Like,
yeah.
So how did you like in the finals? How was your MVP there, boys? You enjoy that? No.
I still had Rogue winning. Like, I thought Rogue was still going to win in spite of that. I didn't think that jungle diff would be enough to overcome it because of like how well Rogue was... I looked like they were playing. But Jankos, I think that this is to me the most impressive title that he's won by far. I mean, even though he won finals MVPs and the other ones, the fact that he was able to do it, like all the championships, they came with the super team, right? And it's like all of them shared those together. And they were really far ahead of other teams. Like, even though some of those finals did get close, it felt like they were always the team that was going to pull it out. It just felt like almost inconceivable that FNATIC would win any of those finals. And this one, not only does he have like just worse teammates in comparison to what he had before, compared to the rest of the league, obviously, because people get better over time, but compared to the rest of the league, his teammates are not as good, not as dominant as they were before. It's also the one where he has to step up and be a leader. Like he never actually had to be the leader. I remember when he won, it was either his first or his second championship. Maybe it was after his full first year. But I remember him like on stage doing the interview where they're all in the little like director's chairs in the front. And he was thanking Perkz. He's like, I just want to say like, thank you, Perkz. Like, I think he's like a really great leader. And Perkz is like, I'm going to cry. Like that whole moment where it felt like he had so much respect for Perkz actually having that ability to lead them through all the tough situations. And it felt like now he's the guy that's doing that. Like he's the fucking old grandpa on the team. Like you even hear Flock and he's like, hey, like after we win, Dad, can we do the CU together? Can we do CU on stage? And he's like, yes, just don't be too fucking loud. All right. Like
get your homework done. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's that vibe. So for me, I was just like really impressed with Jankos winning a title here because this is a title he's not supposed to win. Right. And like, they just won by just having like good fucking mental, like good drafts. He played really fucking well. Jankos was just all over the map, ganking all over the place. So to me, this was the one where I was like, damn, bro, like Jankos really fucking got it done. It's not like he was just surviving within that G2 team. Like he is fucking special.
What do you think, YoungBuck?
I have to just agree with Domir. He is the best player. And again, it's similar to with if you build a team and you have to choose a mid laner, you choose Caps. If you choose a jungler, you don't choose Malrang. You always go for Jankos.
Easy, yeah.
He's the GOAT of European jungle.
Yeah. I even thought, by the way, that story which only came out after he won the finals, that's like some anime shit where apparently when Wonder did that tweet when FNATIC first beat G2 earlier in the split, when Wonder did the tweet about like, you know, essentially what he implied was like, you know, oh, last year's G2 was worse than this one or whatever. No, better than this one rather, because he was on that team, wasn't he, with Reckless, and then he tagged in Reckless. Jankos said basically that he saw that tweet and it did like tilt him, but he didn't say anything to anyone. He just really wanted to win so hard hard. And then it's only like after he won that he even mentioned, which is, by the way, that is just like that Michael Jordan documentary. Like, I know everyone spams that meme, but the difference is normally that meme doesn't fit. That does fit. He really did just go, and I took that personally. And then just like made a fucking death note or something with Wonder's name. That is fucking sick. I love that. I actually love that he delivered on it as well. Because you even see, by the way, in the mic check, there is a moment in one of the games where he's like, get Wonder, we've got to get Wonder right now. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, is that, what the fuck? Like, I love that shit though, because when it actually plays out, that's like proper UFC shit, mate. Like a legit storyline that the beef was real. Cool.
I will say it's very convenient when your team wins that you drop the story afterwards.
Sure. Like, yes. Sure.
Because like, you know, I can assume that like Larson has the same thing lined up. It's like, I remember when all those people were doubting and saying we were chokers, like I was going to overcome it in this finals. And then it's like, they get like 0-3. He's like, fuck, well, shit. Like, I'm not going to say that publicly anymore. Like just stock that one away. Maybe next split we'll go with it. So I think it just, you know, it's very convenient, but I do respect it. I mean, I believe it. I think Jankos is somebody who would fucking find that shit super annoying, especially if he's within the team. I mean, it seems like this team, they just like each other way more than the last one. Like they just seem like they just enjoy being around each other more, which is really core. And it feels like the other teams just weren't able to like match the vibe within their team. I mean, when you listen to the mic check, right? And it's like they're just like celebrating game one. It's like you hear like fucking be like Sue, then like you see Broken Blade out of the course, Sue, like they're just fucking they're just loving it. And then you go over and you hear Rogue and they're like, guys, I really just hope that we can get to game 5 here. Like,
true,
please,
yes.
If we get to game 5, we can win the series. I feel like I haven't played a game yet. It's like, yeah, me too, man. Me too. Like,
yeah, they were like War Survivors or something, weren't they? Like, I haven't even played League of Legends yet. I know it's mad, wasn't it?
They're fucking going through it, bro. They're going through it. So
I feel like there's something we could segue and talk about right there then, YoungBuck. With all the great teams you've in, what do you think about that aspect of like the sort of vibe within the team? Because I also got the sense, by the way, that's the real reason that they did the moves at the end of last year, and why we heard this story that like Caps and Jankos were the ones who sort of voted like no to Reckless. They essentially didn't like the vibe when he was in the team. Like for whatever reason, they were never like all felt like a team and on the same page and stuff. Like,
yeah, for whatever reason.
I mean, you could speculate, but no. What I was basically told was this is where a lot of fans don't realize this isn't a gamble roster in the same sense so many other rosters are. Like I tried to talk about on some of the insight with Dylan Falco. You have to understand, fans. They didn't just look at Flackhead and go, I mean, maybe you could theory craft him with Targamas. And no, they got to play games against the literal world champions during the whole off season with that team. And so not only did they have the team and the coaching staff, but they also saw that not only we do like well in the games, that implies that maybe this could be something, but they knew the vibe was sick. Like, it's actually different to me, YoungBuck, because when people talk about tryouts, they normally mean like 2 weeks before you bloody start the season, you have like a sob and the real player and like you test them and maybe one can win. That's different from this scenario. Like, I've never seen us like this. Essentially, they got to sort of for real test the squad before they signed them. Like, what do you think on this angle? Because I feel like I sort of agree with fans. I do think some of the players are weaker than past G2 lineups, but if you have the core and you're all on the same page, you can accomplish a lot more than you just roster strength, right?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is actually that the work ethics align. I felt like teams where one player is just really slacking and is not playing solo queue or partying or anything like that, that's what really brings the mood down the most. Usually you can handle one toxic player. Of course, it depends a little bit on the level of toxicity, but usually team atmosphere can stay pretty good. And it is a very big factor, especially in best of fives, on whether you can pivot or not. And the moment there are already some arguments within the team and people don't like each other and you've dropped that first game, that's when the cracks start to come and people just mentally check out and are like, I'm not going to put in my best effort or show my best version of myself because it will hurt my ego if we lose while I do so. So that's what you often see happening. And G2 clearly seems to at least be, I don't know about their work ethic too well, just a few of their players, which they play a lot of solo queue.
I mean, one thing we could say to this point before you could continue is that they're actually the team that has the highest rated players in solo queue. Like, all of them are above 1 KLP in EUS. They're all grinding the fucking game. So it seems like they have really good work ethic, but I just wanted to throw that in.
So that's not too surprising. And that's also something we've seen over the years, that usually the team that becomes the champion in Europe also has, on average, the highest ranked players. So it does seem like they have this mental fortitude, and they've shown it throughout the playoffs. So I feel like I still have this question, where are they going to show this version of themselves in the summer? Because for most of the split, they did not look like it looked like there was a really big step between Rogue, FNATIC, and the rest. So I still have some question marks on whether maybe the meta was really just lined up for them with a lot of AD carry nerfs, that Rogue plays through bot lane, FNATIC plays through bot lane, Excel plays their bot lane. Not that they had to play us or that they really cared, but I still want to see them answer that question coming into summer, because I feel like a lot of these teams, a lot of playoff teams, or every playoff teams, maybe except for Misfits, and maybe I'm a little bit hopeful on Excel here, could beat anyone in the playoffs.
Another player I want to talk about and get your take on is, because obviously me and Dom have talked about every week and he'll come in afterwards. Basically, it's Targamas, right? Because even though everyone in the final and on the weekend, it was all about Flackhead and the fact that he was the most scrutinized player, and obviously people had even heard hints, like I'd said before, like they were trying Hansama or Viper or Kazi. Like, these are all obviously way better names if you're a fan. But I actually think the Flackhead story is a little bit like, in the semis, yes, he was sick. But for me, in the final, like the actual story for me is like when Flackhead was playing well, it enabled Targamas to actually be a really sick support player. Because there's another like arrow they had sort of in their quill or whatever, YoungBuck, is like you saw a lot of these series were about like fucking last pick, counter pick support, if you notice. And Targamas now could play all the champions you wanted. He could be like Hillsang and play the Pyke and the Renata and all that shit. So I feel like I think that's something else in the regular splits. Like I saw him have odd games where he was really good. I thought he actually looked a lot better in these playoffs as well. He looked really good by the end of the split.
I think the entire split he was really good, and he's actually the player that when G2 did tryouts, I think they almost immediately set out on Targamas, because we scrimped against them, we tryouted against them, and they did try out a couple different AD carries, but their Targamas was always there. So I think they locked him in really early and knew what they had on their hands. And most people, including myself on the outside, were like, yeah, okay, that's a downgrade. That's not gonna work. But I think Targamas showed up really well throughout the entire split. Playoffs played phenomenally. And if you're a team that's gonna play through mid and jungle, last pick support is so powerful, and they realize that as well.
Yeah, I mean, last pick support is really powerful, and then also, I think he just stepped up in the semifinals and finals compared to how he played the week before. Like, if you think about the reason why Vitality seemed like the hardest series for G2 is because their bot lane was getting stomped in most of these games. Like, their bot lane was really far behind, and Targamas outside of lane has never been a question. Like, everyone knows that he's really good outside of lane. The problem is that a lot of times what was happening is that they're getting beat so hard in lane, they're getting locked in the lane, and then you're just gonna lose too much if you exit the lane at any of these points, because you don't have the roam time. You're not able to like push the wave. You're the ones that are always catching the wave and going to base second. So I thought in these two series it was really important that they were actually able to play matchups like well 2v2. Like, they were winning a lot of the 2v2s. And it seems like they had just a better read on a lot of these bot lane combos than the enemy team. Specifically, in one of the games versus Rogue, I remember them playing Xayah Renata into Nautilus and Jinx, I believe. It was Nautilus Jinx or maybe Nautilus Aphelios. Doesn't matter. Same concept. And they would just like walk up, let the Xayah get hooked. And as soon as the Xayah gets hooked, the Renata ulties, Xayah ulties, they just turn and they kill whoever's engaging. And it felt like other teams like didn't know that that's how the lane matchup worked, because they were just hooking directly into them. They're like, oh shit, I can hook the AD here. I'm going. Didn't realize that they're just losing that trade. That's a losing trade when you play against Renata Xayah. So it seemed like they just had a better like mentality. They just understood a lot of the matchups better than Rogue and FNATIC.
You sort of hinted at this, YoungBuck, with what you said earlier about like you didn't know if G2 in the summer would be like. Here's the problem, mate. That finals performance on that weekend was epic. Like, Caps was amazing. A bunch of people stepped up. I sort of have the same vibe though, mate. Like, I sort of feel like as much as it sounds like being a hater, I sort of feel about G2 like I feel about Jankos right now. It's like, he's not the best jungler in the sense of like, he's not the one having crazy pop-offs every game or like you play everything. He's more like his level's going to be really good. And it's like, if you want to be better than him, you better clear the bar. He's like the limbo bar, as it were. You better get over. I feel like that's all G2's done for me. I might sound like a hater, but if I was like Rogue or FNATIC, etc., I would be going like, look, if we tweak something, we can be number one. We can still be better than them. Like, they're not like the old G2s where it felt like how. Like, I'll give you the story. After that first split, when G2, the super team, and played Origin with all upset, they even, not upset, sorry, that was actually when they had Patrick Stoll. They even said afterwards, like, it felt like you couldn't ever beat them. And you just thought, how could you even conceptually beat them? Like, I don't think anyone really thinks that now. Like, I think actually if you're the top teams, like, someone still has a very good chance to be number one in summer, right? Someone other than G2.
Absolutely. Very high chance, yeah.
What are your thoughts then? Let's do the Rogue angle then. So come on then, YoungBuck. Right, did you have a similar vibe to us? Did you think that Rogue was winning the final? Was it dependent on who they played? I mean, I have to say, I won't lie. As soon as G2 made the final, I actually thought it was going to be even easier for Rogue. I thought they were just going to cleanly win the final. So what were your expectations for them coming in? Had they shown you enough to make you believe they could win?
Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid after they beat FNATIC, and I thought that they overcame a lot of their choking issues.
Same.
And now
they got us all.
Now after the finals, I'm thinking, wait a minute, are they still choking, but did FNATIC just implode on them?
Something to think about, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that Rogue showed that they overcome all their choking issues. I think they still have that question to answer next split.
I just wonder how they're gonna get us even worse, because they've already got reverse swept in a final. They've already dominated they've like did a massive comeback in a winners semifinal, then gotten to the final. Or I guess it was winners final, and then gotten to a final. And you know, you had hope there. So like, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna literally just win LEC, and then slowly you're gonna see them all just like take off the mask, and it's actually just FNATIC under the mask the whole time?
Go.
It's like, holy shit, I knew it was a different team. Like, how do you get even fucking closer than this? Like, at this point, I don't know how I could ever believe in Rogue again.
I know. Problem is, I said that last split, Dom. I said it last split. I promised to myself, you know, I'm off that shit. You know, it's in the past. The problem is, like I said on my other show, they are just fucking KT Roguester. This is like the KT Roaster of Europe. It's mental. Because the problem is, like, YoungBuck, like, it's one thing, you know, that famous saying, it's like, you know, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's like, well, I'm getting fooled 5 times if I go in again. Like, I'm not going to do it. I just know that they're going to win the most games in the split, and then they're going to have one nice playoff series, and then all of a sudden, you know, you'll start thinking, oh, maybe they've learned from their lessons and stuff. Because actually, I have to say, what fucked their narrative is, you nailed it, you just touched on it lightly, because FNATIC also then shit the bed in this lower bracket. Now it doesn't look as epic that they beat them in the upper. You know, the whole point is, if FNATIC was like the secret best team, like that everyone was implying, you know, then it would be epic if you did the comeback against them, and then you beat them properly. I'm sort of with you. The way FNATIC lost in the lower, unfortunately, it sort of does sap a bit of the win. I'll give the analogy. It's like in the UFC, if you're fighting another contender, but then right afterwards he loses to a complete bomb and he's out of the rankings, it sort of steals a bit of the shine of your win. You know, you want your resume to be based on them being all killers, right?
That's also why everyone in post-game interviews always hypes up their opponent, because it just shows how much better they are and how great they are.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, I think Rogue, it's just like, I could have taken it if they like had bad drafts the first 2 games, and then game 3 when G2 had that like horrible, that, oh my god, like that whole, like, that was probably the worst 5 minutes that you could have opening. When your AD carry comes to lane 0-3 and he's level 1 at like 5 minutes and 20 seconds, the game's probably doomed. Like, that's a remake angle in scrims. Like, there's just no point in playing that one out. Like, you just lost the whole game at level 1.
She looked like the games they were having against FNATIC, if you remember, where they just snowballed them so early. You thought, like, oh, it's going to be easy to win this game.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, I could have taken it if, like, you know, they, you know, G2 has 2 better drafts than them, game 1 and 2. Game 3, G2 has like a bad early game, and they end up losing that game. And then the 4th game, you know, they just beat him again by having a better draft. I would have been like, damn, like, Rogue, like, it's not even that you really choked. It's just that they showed up fucking huge, and Caps was in God mode, and your prep wasn't there. But I don't, like, put it on the players choking. But that game 3 just was like, come on, like, how many times did Odo get his flash burned / solo killed by Ornn? Like 4 times in one game? Like, come on, man. Like, BB's Ornn is good. We talked about BB's Ornn last week. It's not that good. Like, if you're playing a good Jace, it can't be that good. It's not possible. If it is, then Ornn is the best champion in the game. Literally, B won it every single fucking time. It has no counters, right? So in this game, it was like, I don't know what happened to Rogue, but they looked so fucking mentally defeated. If you watch the game and you see just like the movements by Rogue, they're panicked and they're up 4K. It's like you can tell by the fights they're taking, and by like the micro within the fights, that they're all like so on edge. When they have complete control of the game, they're winning hard, and it feels like they're losing in the game. It's just like you're waiting for G2, just like old G2, to actually come back and win. It's like, oh, how is G2 going to work their way out of this one? That's the vibe of the entire game. So for me, like, that 3rd game was just like, I think the prep was really bad. I was really not liking giving over the Aria. I mean, I also think it was one of those things where it's like, dude, like, Rogue, you were winning games by going red side, right? Like, you went red side, and that's like how you started taking over. I was down for some red side. Like, get counter pick support. It seems really fucking OP, right? And it, like, just match the mid jungle, get counter pick support, maybe just ban away the Ahri or something, and let one of the other players carry the game. If Caps is the one beating you, give Flockid Zeri or something, and make Flockid carry the game on something like that. Like, I wanted to see some type of adaptation, but I thought the adaptations were really weird. And then that game 3 was just a classic Rogue choke. Like, that's just the one where you're like, I hate you, Rogue. I hate you for doing this to me, you motherfuckers.
Along those lines, actually, YoungBuck, I want to ask about the draft of Rogue, because one of the interesting things was, like Dom said, they only ever went to red side every time their back was against the wall, and that was like the smash in case of emergency and take out the fire extinguisher. So essentially, they implied from these series, they believe blue is stronger, at least for them as a team. And I actually noticed from talking to people behind the scenes, they also actually think technically blue should be the strongest side, and like in history, it nearly always is. But that for some weird reason, I mean, what would your explanation be as to why red seemed like the one that would win in these series or was giving you the edge?
I don't know, but I feel like I have to defend Rogue a little bit there, because if you have side selection and you don't pick blue and you lose, there is no worse feeling, because when you go blue, you basically choose what your draft is going to be and your opponents have to adapt. So you can, because you know your opponents have 3 bans, so you only need to prepare 4 first picks around which you're going to draft. So also blue has a big advantage in terms of the map. So you know that you want, like, picking red side and losing, that feels really stupid as a coach. So whenever if it's a close decision, it's not actually a close decision. You always go blue side. There has been a patch earlier in the season where red side was really good, because there were like there was a really and there was like a full, like a 1 S tier champion in 3 different roles. So it was very easy to trade 1 for 2.
Right. Yes.
And then I felt like on this patch that wasn't really the case. I think there was just more of like, do you play Hecarim, Volibear? Do you care about TF or Ahri? So I think theoretically, red side shouldn't be better, unless you... the benefit is just the last pick, and usually teams that are like at the highest level, if they go red side, they want to counter pick support. So I can see that being the angle. Other than that, blue is just superior in a lot of ways, and I don't think that they lost because of the side selection.
Right. I mean, I think that the side selection is just an issue when you're letting them have like their strongest picks on red side. So like for me, it's like, okay, if you want to go blue, like at least like ban Ahri or something and give them Xayah, because it's like, I mean, what do you think is going to be more of an issue? I feel like it's always easier to play against something like a Xayah than play against something like an Ahri. I mean, obviously it depends. If you have a full comp that needs to dive the enemy AD carry and they pick Xayah and your whole comp is just shit because of that, that's obviously not good. But I would rather them give the Xayah to Flockit, who had like some good games, some bad games. You saw in the series before, like when Flockit was playing Xayah into GP, it looks actually impossible. Like it actually looks like the Xayah can't play the game when playing against something that has like super long range, drops ult on you, like you can't really move. So for me, I mean, I guess you can go blue, but like their blue side draft, like you said, you're gonna be able to prepare, and it's not like they're getting surprised by the Ahri. They just thought that their team comp was a counter, and I just don't really see, like after reviewing it, how that team comp is supposed to deal with the Ahri. I guess it's just supposed to be Lucian dominates mid lane, like you just push it into turret, but I don't even know what your plan is to do like with the mid lane prio. Like maybe you invade topside jungle with like mid and top prio because you have a rumble on your team as well. Maybe that's something that you can do with it. It just seems like it's a much harder win condition than what they could have potentially opted for.
Go on, mate.
Just specifically on the Ahri, because historically, and Dom might know this because it's season 2, season 3 material, whenever Ahri was in the meta, it was against squishy junglers, squishy top laners, usually range supports, and it always fell out of meta, even when it was strong, when there were tanky junglers, tanky top laners. So if you're going to give the Ahri, just look in the Ornn, look in a Jarvan, because Ahri does not have the DPS to handle these champions. But we didn't really Lucian Rumble. It doesn't make any sense.
Was the Rumble itself was that like a bit egregious? Because obviously he picked it previously, but then they won the game, so it was like, wow, what a genius! It's his pocket pick. Was that for game 1?
I like that. I like the pick in isolation, not into the Ahri, but I just like the pick for Odo just into the champion pool that BB's playing, because a lot of the champions that BB would play, for example, the Tryndamere, which he selected in this game, like from what I've heard, Rumble is actually good in that matchup because Rumble can actually kite the Tryndamere with the double E. So I actually thought that Odo actually played really well that game. I think that was the game where he was playing better than BB throughout most of it, but it was just I just didn't like the prep in that game. I just don't think that there was enough CC for the Ahri in general. So it was kind of weird. I wasn't a fan of that. And then game 2, like the draft, I don't like the. I'm a big hater of double AP, but like triple AP, where it's like, I mean, Volibear is obviously part physical damage, but as the game progresses, like your percentage damage comes from your E, which is AoE magic damage, and your ult is magic damage. And the longer the game goes, you're not sitting there with Volibear getting a million W's off on somebody's face over and over, especially if you're going full tank and things like that. So for me, like the second game draft looked like another one where it's like, I don't understand how you're supposed to win this game.
Sure.
So
I
yeah,
will
I just
say,
wasn't
by
a
the
fan
way,
of the blue side prep.
just as a note on the first game, one thing you have to admit about the draft from G2 is there's zero universe in which Rogue ever had a whiteboard that had a comp on it, YoungBuck, that said Tryndamere, Ari, and fucking Misfortune. Like, there's no world in which they thought that was a game one draft. So that even implies to me Dylan Fackel's trying to throw you a bit of a curveball in game one and sort of maybe even see what your strong picks are, test you out a little bit. Because I get the vibe Rogue does the opposite, mate. Rogue feels like in the first games of series, they just draft just for themselves whatever they think works in practice. And then it's only basically if you beat them that they try and adapt eventually. And even then, they only seem to adapt at the last minute when it's like the emergency. What do you think about this? Because this has obviously been one of the things that people are also talking about with Rogue. It's like the one thing that's been constant is they've had a similar coaching staff the whole time they've had these issues in playoffs. So is there something about how they're working? Because obviously we see every time in the regular split, it's amazing. It's a really good approach. But somehow in playoffs, what is it about the nature of a playoff series that this approach doesn't work the same way?
I have to say I don't know. I just don't know. But I do want to add on the point about maybe trying a draft or throwing a draft at them. And I don't think Dylan is the type of person that does that. He is very methodical, and he's not someone that likes to take risks. He is someone who will see opportunities for specific champions in moments, but I think that I am very confident to say that he out-prepped Rogue and knew everything that was going to happen. And I think Rogue would probably not see some of the 1-2s coming, and then they had to adapt on the fly and didn't know that certain champions were good against Ari. So I think it's more that G2 knew what they were going to do from start to finish. I don't think Misfortune was a big surprise either. It didn't show in our scrims. It didn't show in our scrims, but there was word of Misfortune running around in some other scrims, and we saw it in a few player solo queues. So this is not something that was too surprising. But Flacket actually went during the tryouts with G2. This was actually the Misfortune. And I want Misfortune meta, and I forgot the other champion. I think it could have been. It was World's meta. It was Misfortune was much in the meta, and this champion got flagged at his spot on G2, so he probably felt a lot of faith in just playing it.
Yeah. So I thought. So I mean, I think that makes it even more egregious. I was about to defend Rogue there and say, well, they probably didn't know that much about the Misfortune, and they thought if they banned out the Xayah and like Zeru was banned, they were going to force Flocket into like an Aphelios Jinx matchup, which it seemed like that would give comp a better advantage to like win bot lane in. So yeah, that just throws that one out the window. So now the Misfortune is also agreed. Perfect. The draft was terrible from start to finish. Like there was nothing good about it. Like perfect. We can move on.
By the way, being as obviously I've hyped him up over the split, I did think in this finals Larssen was pretty shit. He just did nothing. He just did nothing and died. That's it.
Yep.
What more do you want?
The TF game was just like the TF game was so sad because I mean,
sad on it. Yeah.
The okay, number one, like maybe they mistimed Flocket's ulti, but there was like one where they were like 4v1. Flocket had no cleanse, no ulti, and they just didn't dive him. He had a Braum stack on him. I was like, come on, it's 4v1, just dive the guy. They must have thought he had ulti, so they just mistimed that. But then like you get into the replay, right? Right out of the replay, you see Larssen just hitting top turret. Caps walks up to him without ult, just CCs him under the turret. He just takes like 2 turret shots and just dies. Like he's like 100 HP before Caps has to actually ult on him and kill him. And I was like, come on, man. Like we're not just getting solo killed now, but the guy that came to lane 2 levels down. Like not only did he die in that first fight, and Caps had cleanse that game. He didn't have TP. So it's like when he dies in the jungle at level 2, level 3, horrible for him. He can't TP back to the lane. Then he tries to move to the bot, the second bot skirmish where they ended up doing that dive, where Rogue ended up doing that dive. And Larssen just like is looking at the guy. He's level 3 when you're level 5. On top of that, Larssen ulted right in front of Caps. He must have just been looking top. And that's like a kind of a sign to me of panic, is like you're so tunnel visioned, right? He goes to ulti top at level 7 where they're going to just like win the play massively. And when he does it, Caps is literally sitting on a pink ward. Like in his vision, like Caps is autoing the pink ward. He's like, I'm killing this shit like before you go top. And then he just starts casting his ult. And Ari just charms him. Ari just charms him out of his ult. And then they just like go back to lane. It's like, come on, man. Like use your advantage. Like, come on, this is your game. That's why I was saying if Rogue won that game, I'd be much happier with the finals. I would have been like, you know what? Rogue was just outclassed. They had a couple bad drafts and they just got beat by a team that was really popping off. That was the moment where I was like, game 3 was the moment where I was like, dude, this is just not like, you guys are better than this. You give this lead to like most teams, they're going to beat you. And especially when you look at like the draft, it's not like they have some like, mega scaling draft where they're like, they have a Xayah Ari with like an Orin top. Like it's not like a Trundle. And the other team has Jinx Jace. Like the Jinx Jace team is up 4K and they're not able to do anything. It's not even like close to competitive. That was to me like really disappointing. That's when I started feeling like, damn, this is not the final I wanted to see. I wanted to see a final between two teams that were competitive. And we used to get them. Like if you think about 2019, that was when G2 was at their absolute peak. That's when they went to World Finals. They won MSI. That was like the best team, in my opinion, I don't even think in my opinion, the best team that Europe has ever produced, right? And even FNATIC was playing those teams 2 5-game series in the winner bracket final and then in the final. Like they were actually giving their all. And it feels like FNATIC and Rogue kind of just rolled over and died. I didn't see like the fire in them. I didn't see the fight. It just felt like they didn't fight. They just went out like busters. I don't know.
YoungBuck, what is your take overall on Larssen? Because on the one hand, when he does really well, I'm always arguing that people never give him his flowers and his credit. But I will say, Larssen, games like these are the reason why they don't give you the flowers, mix. Unfortunately, it makes people at the end feel like they can't rely on you and you're a loser, because the problem I have with him, YoungBuck, is he's too fragile. He either carries and is amazing, or it's like this, like where's the sort of B and C game? Like it just drops apart, it seems like.
I feel like he's actually the most stable, but also the least creative, like top tier mid laner. If you compare him to like of Caps or Humanoid or VTO, I think if you put him on a Victor or Oriana, he will probably that is kind of his role within the team. And I think if you put him on more creative champions like TF, he can play them, but I don't think it really suits him too well. So I think he's a top 3 player. I think mechanically he may even be the best or second best. It's just that he lacks a lot of creativity, and therefore it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to win championships, because you need a little bit of oomph that a player like Caps has, for example, and you especially want this from your mid laner.
It's the reason
the
why
winning mentality that Mikyx has. God damn it.
I mean, you're joking, but I agree. Like, that basically is it. Even though people do stress that too much on all those American talks, just like killer instinct or like clutch gene, like, there's a grain of truth in what they're saying. And the problem I have with Larssen is this: I've seen this happen in Counter-Strike before. There's players who have amazing raw aim in Counter-Strike, but then you look at the style of play, and dude, they play like conservative as though they were like a player with shit aim. And you just think like, dude, if I had your skills, I'd try and be the best player in the world. Like, I'd be going ham. Like, I think the same thing when I watch him, because I watch him and on all the champions he's clearly comfortable on, he looks clean as fuck. His mechanics are awesome. He gets everything, all the fucking combos are there. But I agree, like, there's something, like, I can't really, even though he did do it in the FNATIC series, you can't rely on this guy to like 1v9 the game if it's in this shitter. That's the problem. And that is what you normally want from A, mid laner, and B, superstar players, certainly. You know, you want the guy who can just drag you out of a loss, and that's definitely hasn't been Larssen's game thus far. The other player that we have to talk, like, the problem is on Rogue, spoiler, they all pretty much played bad. I'd be hard pressed to find anyone who looked like they played good. But we'll go in order of the players who fucked up. Obviously, we have to talk about Trimby, because in the same way as he was one of the reasons a lot of us thought they might be the champions. YoungBuck, underwhelming finals performance, right? I mean, this guy just felt like he just died a million times. That's all I really saw.
Yeah, I think Trimby is a player that is most feared for his laning and not too much for his roaming, and that didn't really show within the entire series.
Lane.
Yes, exactly. And he's probably the best laning support. So if he doesn't win lane, then... And it's also Rogue, just stylistically, they really play towards bot lane as their win condition. So if they don't perform, they're just never going to win, which again makes their loss with the 0-3 flag even worse, because this was actually their playstyle, getting the lead through bot lane and then still not being able to finish. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, it's super disappointing. I think that's kind of where we differ on like the red side thing, because from my perspective, I was thinking like, oh, if they get red side and they get counter pick support, instead of it enabling mid jungle, I just feel like, yeah, I mean, it just enable your lane. You can get the counter pick support. You can just get something that counters them. So if they're forced to blind pick a Nautilus or something like that, then you can just be on the Renata side, and you can or you could play like a Lulu or like any of the picks that are really good. I mean, I think one thing that Trimby plays really well are the range supports. I think he's one of the best range support players in Europe. You know, like they played a lot of Caitlyn Lux before. They played Nami Lucian to varying levels of success. He played Lulu. Obviously, it wasn't the right time for it in the game one, but I wanted to see them enabled to actually win, because it just felt like they were just losing the bot lane matchups. Like, I don't know how the matchups are supposed to, I'm not gonna say I'm an expert in bot lane matchups, but it seems to me like Nautilus Jinx versus Renata Xayah just seems like it's a counter, at least in lane, because if you're like, what do? You hook either of them, they just turn on you and kill you. Like, what? I don't see what the Nautilus is supposed to do in this type of lane. And yeah, to me, it was just really disappointing that they weren't able to win. And I think that's kind of like one of the things that we talked about here with Larssen being a choker. I felt like that was kind of something that Flock had showed the opposite of. It seemed like Flock had played better in these series than he did in the last ones. Well, I mean, he played better in a couple of in the Misfits one, but in the Vitality series, it wasn't the best. And I felt like Flock had actually stepped up, and like all the players leveled up. But that's something that's nice to watch. It's like a rookie that actually has the confidence. Might go down to the team chemistry, might come down to the mentality, how comfortable they are within that environment. But it seemed like he actually they just stepped up. I mean, if Targamas and Flock are winning bot lane, and BB's winning top, and your mid jungler just ahead, it's like, yeah, that's a 3-0 right there. Like, where are you winning? Where do you have any advantage on the map?
Yeah, indeed. I'll also say as well, if you listen to the mic check, mate, you can just tell by Trimby's voice he was shook as fuck in this final. Like you could, if you watch the mic check when they win against FNATIC, he was making like lots of great calls. He was telling people to calm down during fights, like play the right pacing. In these fights, he sounds panicked as fuck, mate. And you can even see by his gameplay, he's doing that shit where when he's talking, it looks like he has less control over his bloody character. Like, I hate that, mate. That kills you inside when you see that, and you're like, because that means you've got major things to like. Look, to be fair, he's still a rookie to me. He's only played 3 splits for fuck's sake, but that stuff doesn't come easy. Like, that's the hardest earned stuff in the game, is like being comfortable in pressure moments, being able to make calls when it's hectic. That's why, by the way, when you have those qualities like the aforementioned Perkses of the world, you can write your check for the next few years, mate. You are just worth your weight in gold, right, YoungBuck?
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, like Trimby has had this. There has been talks behind the scenes that Trimby indeed has some issues playing under pressure, and that he becomes very vocal, but in all the wrong ways on stage.
Right,
Ali thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like he starts to really repeat a lot of useless things. Ali, target selection, etc. I hope he works on that and sees that as an issue, because I think he could be part of the next generation supports when Hilly and Mikyx definitively hand over the torch.
Yes.
So I hope he also listens to this show and then actually knows that people are talking about this. So there's teammates leaking this, there's staff leaking this, but he's a player that should be part of the next generation.
That was just funny the way he said it. Like, I just hope that he watches the show and he knows that his teammates are talking about him. Like,
I hope he finds out his girlfriend's cheating on him. I kicked his dog up his ass and I fucked his mom. Like, fucking hell, all right. I hope he tunes in. Yeah, bloody hell.
Oh my god, it's gonna be a bad time if he tunes in, man. Like, I don't know if you wish that on him, but okay, like that's an interesting place to go.
I definitely agree with that sentiment as well. Here's the good news: if you're Trimby, is mate, you are this close to actually becoming, like YoungBuck says, one of the all-time great European support players. You could be in the vein of the Mithy, Yellow Star, Mikyx, Hillsang. Like, we're talking about the best ever player. Like, the skill set's there, you can see it. So to me, if I were him, especially because here's the other thing: if you're someone like IWillDominate, yeah, you've had years of this suffering. This is still early in the game. If you're Trimby, mate, just look at Perks' career. If you put this behind you and you win like the next split or you're the MVP, no, people will forget that you ever choked, mate. You'll just become a legend at that point in time. So I would, as bad as it is, I would actually take heart of the fact that I'm only that far away.
Definitely. And like the Perks thing, right? Like the Perks choked at his first couple international events.
Yes.
People would just flame him for how hard he was choking. I mean, obviously, like it was a little bit overstated because of the vacation
and stuff. Yeah, sure.
And because he was like super cocky and he has that smug European mid laner's face, you know. So everyone was just like ready to hate on him. He just has that quality that just makes people root for their fucking failure. But I mean, look, no one talks about Perks being a fucking choker now. Like, if you just start delivering, then we don't talk about this on talk shows anymore. We're not going to be just still calling. Remember when YoungBuck told you your girlfriend was cheating on you on that show? Like, we're not going to be doing the callbacks and stuff like that. So
exactly. Oh, the other person I thought we should focus on, then we'll go to the other teams. We'll talk about FNATIC. Right, the last person, just because we've again, he's been such a topic of conversation for Rogue, is obviously Malrang. He was the guy who came in this year, such a night and day contrast to Inspired. You see how it seems like it's brought new life to some of the players and the style. But the problem is, I've actually noticed this, right? As much as people don't want it to be because they think it's too reductive, YoungBuck, they hate the idea that anyone says like young Malrang was in any way like figured out. I don't think it's that he's figured out, because I think that sounds like, you know, he's just he does a basic bitch thing and you just know what he's doing. I think it's just more that what he does can't work forever. You can't get away with it in every game. You can't always go with a fucking wonky ass build in runes and just get 10 extra ganks off and win the game. Like, I will say in the final he looked worse, but I also think like some of this was due for me. Like eventually he was going to have a bad game. And by the way, surely Jankos is the player to expose you if you've got any dodginess in your game. What did you think of Malrang?
I think throughout the split, he was a player that was very close to how he played in scrims. He was very sacrificial and very active on the map. And you usually see this from both teams in scrims. But then when it hits stage, usually both junglers, both teams play much more passive, and Malrang wasn't and was really reaping the benefits from that. But you can see that as more pressure builds up, even Malrang started to have less and less impact on the games, and Rogue became a slower team, and that's where his playstyle caught up to him, because he couldn't do it under the most pressure there was that the LSE could create, basically.
What did you think, Dom?
So my take on him was that I don't think he was doing that much of that like super sinner stuff that everyone was talking about.
He wasn't doing anything, dude. He was just chilling in this game.
Even last week when he was getting all those ganks off, those were ganks that were coming like within his clear. Like it was coming within his natural clear, that the lanes were set up in ways where he didn't have to like randomly run across the map, or he didn't have to like base on top side and then see his bot camps respawning and then run back top anyway just to get the gank off to hit these like really crazy timings. In that series of Rogue vs FNATIC in the final 3 games, a lot of the kills were just coming within his clear because his teammates were just outlaning him. Like Odo would just have the wave in a spot where it's like, this Cyan has no TP and is just like pushed up to my fucking turret, and I have the wave frozen so he can't actually crash it. And Malrang would just go and take a free kill. In the game that we talked about last week, the Trundle game, for example, he did a standard Trundle clear where he just did 4 camps and then he just goes mid, gets a kill. Then he exits through mid to topside, so they know he's topside, and then he just walks top and gets a kill. So it's not like he's doing like this crazy jungle pathing where it's like, holy shit, like how did this guy fucking end up here? It's like, you know how he ended up there. Like he walked across your fucking screen. Like that's how he ended up there. So for me, like I think he was just playing like pretty like just standard good jungling throughout.
Would you liked him to flip the switch and go psycho? Would you have liked him to have done that?
I don't think that he. So this is maybe this is just jungle bias because I'm a jungler and I see the game through a jungle mindset. But a lot of the times I'm looking at these games and I don't feel like he has like great opportunities because his lanes are not in the same states as they were before. Like his lanes are just not gankable, so he can't really do the things that he was doing before. And I mean, sure, like there was some games where he was spending way too much time on pink wards. He just kept on not walking into bushes and he was seen and then teams were respecting him, but he just didn't have like the options to make these plays. I mean, if you have a Lucian mid versus an Ahri and you're playing Xin Zhao and your Lucian dies early, it's like that lane is like, you're not visiting that lane anymore. Like that's not happening. Where are you going to go? You're going to go gank the fucking Tryndamere top, the Ghost Flash Tryndamere top with Xin Zhao? I mean, good luck. Like maybe if Odo freezes it for you at like level 4 and the Tryndamere has to walk up, maybe then you have the opportunities. His bot lane was just losing a lot of lanes. Like I don't think that he can do that much in these games when the lanes are playing out like this. He's just not having the windows. Like I'm sure he's looking at the lanes, but he just doesn't see the play. I don't see the play either, and I'm watching it from third-party perspective. So I don't know how he's supposed to see the plays.
If for some reason YoungBuck in the summer, again, purely speculation, imagine we went to a meta where it was farm junglers again. Would that affect Malrang? Do you think it would cripple him at all?
I think it would cripple Rogue.
Right.
But that's primarily because I see Rogue as a team that has very stable solo lanes, but there's not a lot of creativity, which it's okay. But then you need that spark from the jungle. You need a little bit of craziness, and Malrang does have that. But if it becomes a farming meta, I don't see how he's going to be the spark for Rogue as a team. And I felt like, if anything, Comp also choked quite a bit, especially in the last game on the Jinx. I felt when I see him not auto Ahri in the fight around there.
He's so scared. He's so scared.
Yeah, he had some fights where he did no damage. It's true. Yeah.
So if you have a support that's really focused on strong laning, you have very stable but not creative solo lanes. I don't see how they're going to do in a farming jungle meta. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. What they need is there's a player right now that's playing in NA who's like really good at farm style, plays for Evil Geniuses. I think that guy would be perfect for that team.
Really?
Potential MVP of one of the splits. They need that guy to come back on the team, and then maybe that team would succeed. Maybe get an AD carry from the same region.
And by the way, I'll tell you what, obviously this is a joke, but if he ever did come back, the first thing he'd say is he'd just go and thank every laner. Like, you guys are actually really good laners. I never really appreciated you until I went to NA and played with those NA players. Now I understand. Yeah, you actually are fucking amazing laners. My bad. Right, let's go to FNATIC now. Obviously the sexy topic, right? One of the things I find wild, it links into what we were just talking about, YoungBuck, is I know FNATIC fans have always been this way. You were in FNATIC, you were in G2, you know it's this way, right? FNATIC fans do it like this. I follow I feel like I'm David Attenborough observing the fucking chimps, which is the FNATIC fans, and going, you see, when they throw the shit at each other, we are angered and feel insecure. Like, I'm like doing that, right? So what I've learned about FNATIC fans goes, it's YoungBuck. their team is the best with all the best players, and they're definitely going to win. But the second they lose, they always knew this was the wrong roster. Sam Matthews has failed the org. The coach didn't draft correctly. Any player that isn't their favorite, shit the bed, should be kicked from Fnatic. Like, they always go so far the other way, dude. Like, for me, listen, I agree. The way they collapsed in these series at the end, I'd have concerns about that. But when I look at their roster on paper, I'd be like, I'll run this back tomorrow. Like, these are fucking sick players. If I'm a coach, I'm loving this lineup. So I feel like, because I've seen these Fnatic fans now on who are like open letters to Sam Matthews, like, please, we must fix something. It's like, I also feel like they're not that far away, mate. Am I delusional on this? I think this is a banger roster.
I think if you ask any professional player, coach, analyst going into the season, they would have 95% would have Fnatic as number 1, and the other 5% would have Vitality as number 2.
Yes.
And now that makes this playoffs a lot of fun, because them finishing third, and there's some rumors of like the team not gelling well. What the fuck do you do if you're Fnatic? You cannot upgrade a single role.
Yeah,
you cannot upgrade.
I mean, look, I've heard rumors of potential jungle replacement, and I feel like that wouldn't do shit. Like, I think that if Razork is not on this team, like the rumors are obviously because, you know, Maxie's doing really well in Fnatic Queso apparently, and you know they won the Spanish league. I just really hope that nothing happens, because I feel like I think Razork had really bad games at the beginning of the season. I think in these games, he is getting fucking inted by his laners. Like, his laners are making it such an unplayable game. The enemy jungler just gets fucking like 8 kills before the game even starts. Like, what do you do as a jungler? Right. You look at like what Razork has to do. He's like diving bot, has to hit every fucking skill shot, gets like a 1-for-1. He's like, nice. And then he just looks top and wonders, like, just like playing like the boss FFS, just like suiciding for the wave. He's like, oh, another good death to the jungler. And then he just like pushes the wave as he dies. It's fucked up. I mean, Humanoid just won't dodge a gank. I don't know. Like, I don't know what happened to this guy.
Yes.
He used to be like that cocky, confident player where it was like, oh yeah, you can gank me, but I'm always gonna like outplay. You know, I'll sidestep this guy. But now it's just like he just gets hit by everything and dies. And it's like at some point, it's like you are just feeding, bro. Like, you are feeding the enemy jungler. It is so fucking hard to play. And then the other problem is, I think it's just like Hilly. I think Humanoid and Hilly are just like, they're sprinting in every game. And I don't know what happened to Hilly, because he had a fucking beast of a season. He looked like he was on another level, and now when I'm watching him play, he's just running it down. And it's not even like those Hilly ints where you can kind of like figure out where, like, what he's going for. He's like playing really aggressively, and he just goes for a dive that doesn't work out, and he dies under turret. And it's like, whatever. It's just Hilly. It's, you know, it's a double-edged sword that is Hillsong. It's fine. It's like he's just like kind of like walking away from them and dying. And it's like, all right, well, that's not gonna work. And it just felt like that Fnatic was really unable to like adapt throughout the series. It felt like after they lost that first TF game, they're like, well, I don't even know what the fuck, like, it just warped their whole perception of what is real. They're like, I guess we don't play TF. I thought that was our best fucking pick. Lose 4 games in a row on it, go into the series versus G2, they lose the first game on it. It's like, oh, I just watched the same game a million times in a row. And then finally, like by game 3, when they actually do have a draft that can win and they get to the late game, they just lose it in the most like inconceivable way possible. It's like, you're the team with Baron, your Gangplank just like 1v3 triple killed them at the Dragon, and then he just like dies 1v1 versus the Gnar, where it's like all he literally needs to do is like hold the Gnar, and then his team pushes bot, and then they're chilling. Like, they have no pressure on them. Wonder dies, and there's like the TPs. Then you see Fnatic, they're like trying to base, like 2 people base, Upset's left alone, he's dying. It's like, oh my god, like they're just fucking falling apart. So I don't know. I think it's really weird. That's why it's so hard for me to look at this and be like, yeah, Fnatic played their fucking best and G2 was just better. Like, that's not how I feel when I watch it. Like, I do actually think that Fnatic played under their level and Rogue played under their level. And that's not like to discredit G2, because I mean, G2, like, they can't do anything about that. If your teammates are gonna, or if your opponents are gonna fucking choke, they're gonna fucking choke. Like, nice. Yes. Like, what are we gonna do about it? But I just feel like the same way I said about Rogue, if Fnatic won that game 3 and then lost the game 4, I'd be like, you know, it's drafts, whatever. But it's like, losing that game 3 is criminal, especially when your back's up against the wall. Like, you're not gonna have enough fight to win that one. Come on, guys, we got to be winning that game 3. So I don't know. It's weird.
What I think, it's almost to the point of hilariousness, is the whole Twisted Fate, because they were terrorizing scrims with TF.
Okay.
To the point. So for example, we had draft meetings and we're like, guys, we might leave TF open against Vitality and just see what happens, because YoungBuck thinks it's a bad champion. We've been leaving it open in regular split against everyone except Fnatic. And the guys were like, you know what? Maybe we can tank a game against Vitality and see if we can beat it. But please, Joey, if we play Fnatic, do not leave it open. We cannot scrim against this. We cannot play against this. This champion was terrorizing us. I think we were like 1-7 against it. And then They go on stage with the TF pick, doesn't work. Pick it again,
So
doesn't
it was
work.
your
Pick it again.
fault.
I
They're
imagine.
playing against XL. They were getting all this fake data from you guys. They thought TF
Yes.
was really broken, and then they just ran it down with it. Perfect.
And I think it's not just XL, because I think that other teams didn't have the priority that FNATIC had on it. Like already at the end of the regular split, some teams were dropping the priority on it, but FNATIC was the team that was always first picking it, and it just kept working for them as Scrim. So they got on the losing end of a big fake data conspiracy from the other teams, basically.
Yeah. That's obviously the classic example people know is the Gold Immortals one with the fucking Hoonie Lucian top back in the day, where the same thing happened. Apparently they were shitting on all the scrims on the other side of the bracket, and in the real game, turns out it doesn't work. And then even the team beating them, losing against them, was like, well, lol. You know, what do you want? Like, we couldn't beat it. No, that's the other reason, though, why I find the TF storyline, I think it's a way bigger storyline than people have played up here, Dom, because here's the part people don't talk about. Humanoid, in the space of one playoffs, has called his whole identity as a player into question. This was supposed to be the new Caps, and the reason he's the new Caps is because not only is he the best mid laner, he's clutch, and he is the playmaker that you need, and he's the one that, like, essentially, by the way, you're setting someone up there as, like, he's, like, maybe the guy we could even put against the best Asian players. In this scenario, if all of that is true, which it was until this split, right, when he says, give me the TF, dude, that's what you're wanting as the coach. It's like, oh, nice, my star player is going to carry this fucking game on a playmaking job. This is how we get back in the series. So you're wanting that in theory, but man, look at how bad these games are. And I'm with you, by the way. Here's the thing. He even reminds me a little bit of old Caps in this sense as well, right? It's one thing if you're like I always used to think half of the Caps, like lane ints, were actually fine. It was just like he tried to greed a bit and save his flash. And sometimes he was even right. It actually maybe isn't even worth burning flash there if you need to like do something like take a dragon in a minute or something, you know. But I actually think now, like, mate, some of the times he dies, it's like, dude, it's not solo queue. That's mad disrespectful the way you just stay pushed up in the lane, or you just randomly face check a brush, just walk into it as a mid. Like, why? Like, I almost felt like he was anti-clutch in these playoffs, mate. It was really disturbing.
It was disturbing. That's the perfect way to put it. It was
just for him to turn up, like, who the fuck is this guy? This isn't the coolest guy I was watching before.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's just some stuff where it's just like, I mean, it looks really good when you draw pressure and you survive every time. It's like, damn, look at him wasting the other jungler's time. Like, that's really fucking nice. But when he's just like hard feeding, it's like, damn, bro, like, I would flame you if I was your jungler. Like, I would be so pissed off if every single game the enemy jungler is getting a kill mid. It wasn't every single game because
it felt like it though. Yeah.
I mean, there was like the Kaisa game where he kind of survived, but then he just died later. He had his flash like multiple times, just wouldn't flash. I don't know. It was really weird to me because I feel like he's got to be better than this. Like, it's really weird because I feel like all their laners just got worse at the same time. Like, all the laning just became a lot more skeptical. I mean, Hilly and Upset, and there's a reason why everyone was saying that they were the best thing. Think about this. The whole community was fucking pissed when Flockhead said, I don't think that Upset and Hilly are as good as Comp Trimby. He didn't even say we're better than Upset and Hilly. He didn't say that.
Yeah.
He said, I think Comp Trimby is actually better. And people were like, fuck you, Flockhead, you piece of shit. How the fuck could you say that about Upset and Hilly? They're the fucking greatest. Like, it was like downvoted. People were losing their mind. And we were the ones that were trying to be like, well, you know, from his perspective, he just played against Hilly and Upset, and they actually won a couple of the lanes where they actually got stomped by Comp and Trimby in the regular season. So it's kind of understandable from his perspective. He's not watching all the games like us. He's just saying from his own personal experience, he finds it harder to play against Comp and Trimby. That's all, right? And now this Upset and Hilly, like, they're just, like, it's not even, I don't even think it's that much Upset. It feels like Hilly's just running it down, like, in almost every lane phase, which is why I think it's really funny that so many people have just decided to, like, pin Upset as
they're hitting on him like a motherfucker, yeah.
Because when I'm watching these games, I'm like, so Humanoid's inting, and Hellsong is inting, right? And Wonder's like kind of inting too. And then for some reason, the people that I feel like are getting flamed the most are like Razork and Upset. And it's like, how the fuck does this work? Like,
I think
so
some of those games are unplayable, mate, for real. Like, I think if you went back and watched, I don't know what he's supposed to do in some of these lanes. Because he's losing lane and he's then just behind in the game, and he's never getting into a team fight. His team's dying all over the map. Like,
I mean, look, Razork admittedly had some like really fucking bad team fights. Like in the Hecarim game, he just looked tilted. Like there was a couple times where he ulted in where it's like, you're just like, you're inting here, bro. But the Upset angle, I'm like, damn, like, I mean, if I was going to say who's the best player throughout playoffs, I would probably say Upset. I think Upset probably at the most consistent level throughout the games. And then there will be like this thing where it's like, oh, well, he's overly passive. It's like, I don't know what does AD carry do if your team is inting? Like, what AD carry is going to have the whole team just int and be like, doesn't fucking matter. I'm 80 carry. I'm just gonna 1v9 that shit anyway. Like that doesn't exist anymore if you're playing against like human beings, man. Like maybe in like season 2, like Uzi was doing that shit or something, but like that's not, I don't think, a reasonable expectation to hold people up to. So it feels like people just hate him because he's like cocky. Yes. And like he had the Adam beef. Like, but that's like such a fucking dog shit reason to then rewrite the history of what's happening within the game. So
yes,
I don't know. I think it's really strange. I mean, I saw what you retweeted earlier today where it's like, I actually just hate Upset because Dom and Thorin like him.
I know.
The fuck?
Like,
so
Jesus.
You're rating a player based off 2 people that are not involved with that player and their perception of it. Like, how mentally ill do you have to be to go down that fucking rabbit hole where you want a player to fail because a fucking internet personality likes them?
What's your take in general on the bot lane? Because obviously you used to have the Reckless Hylissang bot lane in your time with FNATIC. Now we've got Upset, who I think, by the way, I don't know what I know the real problem is it's the fan bases that are warring here. I actually find the Reckless Upset comparison a really interesting one. There's sort of like certain things are the same, certain things are different, how they play. What have your thoughts on this bot lane been?
I think Upset Hylissang is the best bot lane in Europe. I just feel like maybe from Flag's position, actually I'm not going to speak on his behalf. It's way easier to draft against FNATIC because they will not pick a Caitlyn to win the lane.
Right.
They will not really go out of the norm. Like it will just be Jinx, Aphelios, maybe Azaya.
They played like the Caitlyn Renato lanes, which looked pretty good, where they were like dragging the person into the traps. I thought that was pretty interesting, but maybe they didn't play that much of it like in scrims or whatever.
Yeah, it's also about the priority of it because there were a lot of drafts where they were leaving Caitlyn to later on in the draft. Teams were leaving it open against them, and if you leave Caitlyn open against Rogue, they're first picking it just to win that lane. Player like Comp can always pull out a Draven. You always have to have that in the back of your mind. You know that Trimby has a bigger champion pool than Hylissang. So I feel like Rogue and FNATIC have a similar identity where they will draft for bot lane and they will play for bot lane, but Hilly and Upset are better. Comp and Trimby play more champions, so it's a lot more difficult to draft and prepare for them.
Yeah, makes sense. What did you think of like the Hylissang ints though? That must have been tough to watch, mate.
Yeah, especially that Jarvan gank on bot lane where he could have either
flayed it, flashed
it.
I ran it down. Like, come on, it's Hilly.
Yeah, it was difficult to watch, and the only thing that I can kind of chalk it up to is that he used to be very sensitive to team issues. He would underperform a lot when there were like big issues within the team shortly before matches. So I think that may have played a factor in it, but I don't know what's going on in the FNATIC camp too much.
So the you don't know, but the fans know. It was Upset. That motherfucker, he flamed Hylissang in a scrim. And then Hilly just dropped off the face of a cliff. And then, he was saying something like, Humanoid, I think you died to too many ganks. And then Humanoid got offended too. And then Wonder decided to jump in to just make it camaraderie. So the whole team just hates Upset. That's why they're into. We found it. Perfect.
There you go. Perfect. No, along those lines, though, I will say, if I actually even think when YoungBuck says that, all the times I ever heard from his FNATIC teammates, so, I won't say who, it could sometimes different players. Certain players could be the mid lane, it could be the AD carry. I'll give you a fucking bonus options. When certain players thought Hylissang was like too aggressive in FNATIC, or he was in or playing too abusive, etc., I noticed that is nearly always the time where in LEC his level also did drop YoungBuck, and that's why those are the splits where at the end, like there was the rumor maybe he gets kicked or maybe he doesn't rejoin or re-sign. Like it's why I always have felt like it's why actually, unfortunately, I know that fans just hate Upset even more because my joke is, but it's true. Hylissang used to be the whipping boy. What happened was, if Reckless lost, you blame Hylissang. Now, if Hylissang loses, you blame Upset. It's like, this just shows how fans are all over. And by the way, I'm just going to say this right now. I can't even conceive of how you could be a fan of Reckless's gameplay, key distinction, gameplay, and hate Upset. What do you enjoy? Like, what the fuck is that? That's like being like, oh, fucking chocolate. Hate that. Double chocolate. Delicious. Like, what? How could that even be? Like, it's the same shit. Like I get, like, it just shows, by the way, what I always knew. Half the people are just fans of these guys' personalities, or they're like sort of like a stan, and it's like they're like a pop singer. They're like Korean style fans of idols. Like, if you're really a fan of the style of player we're talking about, I can't even conceive of why you'd hate Upset if you like Reckless. Like, it's the same shit. And spoiler, before everyone goes, but you hate Reckless. First of all, I never hated him. I just like some things about him as a player, and I just thought Forgiven had a better style of AD carries at the end of the fucking world. And by the way, as Dom said, I'll agree with you. Nobody can play Forgiven season 4 to 7 style. Like, that doesn't exist in League of Legends now. If you even did it, by the way, you'd just get ganked like a motherfucker in the teleport meta. You'd just be pushed up and lane, the teleport behind you in the brush. You'd die every single time. It wouldn't even work in the modern day.
Well, I mean, when TP changes, maybe it would come back. Maybe this is the season. Maybe maybe you need Forgiven back on a team. That would be
now you've gone too far, Dom. Of all the hot takes you've had the whole year, that one's too much. That's a step too far, right?
Yep. I think Forgiven should come back and rejoin SK. He'll carry that team out of the dumps. He'll be one of the best.
There you go.
So.
I can't lie, I would take Forgiven over Jezu tomorrow, but sorry, was this thing still on? Right. I mean, anyway. Well, here's my question then, YoungBuck. What does FNATIC change? How does FNATIC become good?
You don't what do you can't change it. It's the same problem for Vitality. You can't make a change. You've just miserably failed to split, and you cannot make a change. It's just not possible.
You just hope people's levels improve, or in this case, like I'll give you an obvious one to me as to why actually I'm less concerned about FNATIC than I am about Rogue, believe it or not. The Rogue one is like they've still got something mental when they're in a lot of pressure. That's really tough. I think that's the hardest thing in all of esports and sports, by the way, mate. I've seen plenty of sports stars have this problem. But in my opinion, the FNATIC one just looks like something to do with how they play in the game, mate. Like for real. Like one thing I've said the whole split, it's the reason why, if you go back on any of these episodes, the reason why I typically didn't think FNATIC could win the league is because there's certain principles, at least in LEC, always seem to apply. And as you just saw, having really strong jungle mid synergy is a fucking brilliant way to win the LEC. They have like anti-synergy between their jungler and mid. Like my joke is it looks like they haven't even met. Like in theory, we're supposed to have like the best mid laner. Razok was a pretty good jungler. Like there's something doesn't seem to like jive with these guys. Because that's why all the stories I was hearing was, this is actually how people were hating on Upset Dom. They were like, he's just demanding that everyone play through him. It's like, dude, he looks like the only guy that Razok can actually like play with. Like he comes to his lane because it works if you go to the bot lane.
Yeah, I can't imagine why the jungler didn't want to visit Humanoid's lane in these series, like when he's just fucking running it down constantly. Like that would, I guess jungler, I personally love it when my lanes run it down and I just have to fucking walk to their lane every single time that they push a wave just because I know they're gonna get ganked and die otherwise. Perfect.
YoungBuck, you don't have to respond to that part, obviously. That's just an aside.
Just ignore me on the show, the YoungBuck. You just say whatever you want and just like.
What do you think about the jungle mid in FNATIC, basically?
They're not scary. They're not someone that you're afraid of when you draft. You're not like, we need to ban this mid jungle combination. At best, you're like, maybe we ban TF, maybe we ban Diana, but really, it doesn't matter. There's not the big threat there. There's a threat in individual skill, but there's not a threat that you need to ban out certain combinations. But I do think.
What do you think about the Volibear then? Because they were banning Volibear on blue side, and that seemed like it was like Razor's champion, so that seemed a little bit weird. Did you?
It's not only Razor's champion, is that FNATIC wins through bot lane. So having a champion like Volibear that will basically guarantees you that you can win the bot side of the map, seems like a very weird decision. And that's why I think if you ask me right now who's going to win Summer Split, I'd still put my money on FNATIC, because I think that if they get a little bit of their shit together or put some problems aside before stage and they have a better read on the meta and they don't first pick a TF when no one else does, they should be the favorites to win the split.
See, this is I love this because this is going to create such a good just amount of discourse in the comment section, because I mean I was the same way, right? Like I still think FNATIC would win the next split. So now it's like, are they going to be like, oh, but like YoungBuck's a good coach, so he's pretty smart about it. I agree. Maybe FNATIC just like did underperform, or are they just gonna just loop them into it? It's like just beat the shit out of all of us. Like they're all fucking old and delusional. Just hit us with it. So
just be. I used to be in FNATIC. He's biased. He's trying to win the FNATIC fans over. I can even generate all the fucking shit storylines they have. But they have a lot of them. Should we talk a little bit about XL at the end? Right. Here's the thing. Let's start with this. So. Obviously, I'll rewind it all the way to make a through line. One of the first big XL topics we talked about on this show, YoungBuck, was we were a bit critical of the way that XL brought in Mikyx, because the problem goes like this. The messaging of the whole split was like, we've kept that really exciting combo of jungler and support that you all saw from last split. Let's see what they can do this split. Oh, 3 weeks in, get the fuck out. Like, I know that's not how you guys meant it, but it almost felt like, and we're going to work on building them up. And actually, is Mikyx available? Hey, I'm not going to bother building you up. Actually, see, Adrian, you're off, mate. Like, obviously it wasn't that way, but give us your take on it, because it seemed a bit ruthless,
I think we never said internally or externally that we were building the roster around Marcoon and AdVM.
Okay.
Internally, we actually wanted to build a roster around YoungBuck and Marcoon at the end of the season. We wanted to extend them and then try to send extension offers to multiple players after that. But we first wanted to sign those and have them on the roster before we started building further. Because we felt that everyone else really wanted to play with them as a duo. They were a very strong mid-jungle duo last summer and got us a lot of the wins. So that felt a little bit weird. So I don't feel like we were trying to necessarily build up the rookie roster. Maybe the social media team leaned into it, but I don't think that was like ever internally the message. And
Fucking Fosty, god damn it.
yes,
He ruined it.
but and the biggest thing is Tim came in halfway through the offseason. Tim Reichert from Schalke came in, and he just had a different vision of a few different things. And when Mickey came available and he saw was going 1-25 in scrims, he pulled the trigger on signing Mikyx. And
1-25, god
wow,
damn.
surprise.
25 in scrims. What the fuck?
It's a record.
That's special. That's special. Fucking hell.
I mean, that would have been better messaging. Like, that
Yeah,
legit
exactly.
is just better messaging. Instead of being like, we need the Mikyx winner mentality, it's like, we cannot win a fucking game. Like, we are losing every game. We won 1 out of 25 games this week. Please, anyone join the team. Like,
Fair
that would have been so much better.
Okay, I understand. It was an emergency scenario there. I get that. Okay. And I will say, obviously, the problem with Mikyx as well was this. Because of last year, people were out on him. Obviously, you thought, is he even any good anymore? Listen, it didn't even take him. It took him like a week and he was already fucking popping off in the games. Like, obviously, in the end, now with results, we now know it was a great move. Like, it seemed like it would turn the team around.
I think everyone knew, at least internally, everyone knew it was a great move. It was just, it was a sensitive move because Adrian wasn't really the main reason why we were losing those scrims either. I think he was like more like a secondary or tertiary problem. So that kind of felt bad internally and also for the players. But, you know, even the players that were friends with Adrian and really liked working with him, they were like, it's Mikyx. Yeah, no hard. We can't really have any hard feelings towards Excel for them signing this player over Adrian. There's just, how can you get upset? How can you get upset at Excel management? It's just not possible.
I will say as well, by the way, after this split, like if you're Mikyx, you can play League of Legends as long as you want. Because you know how in the NBA they say the last thing to go is like your shot. Like if you have the mechanics of a good jump shot, you can do that if you're 40 years old. Because you can just stand in the corner, wait till you're open, and you get the ball, and you shoot, right? In the same sense, if you are a support player who knows what angles to find to engage and could just press the button, you can have a fucking professional League of Legends career for many, many years to come. Because, dude, the amount of teams I look at now that need that, they want that from. They don't have that. Like, mate, when I watch fucking Vitality the whole time, I'm just like, dude, imagine if they had Mikyx. Holy fuck, these fights would be different. They could win some of these games. Like, I think he's actually been sort of like, because of the bad year in G2, he's been sort of undervalued a bit, mate. It's amazing this guy wasn't on a team.
Yeah, he had a rough year in which I still think he was top 5 easily, and that's in a bad year. And in a good year, it was always, well, who's the best support in Europe? Is it Hylissang or is it Mikyx? Yes. And it was up for grabs. Whatever split it was a little bit different here and there. Mikyx was such an obvious signing, and he was obviously not going to be bad, and he was obviously going to be a top 3, top 4 support, depending on how the likes of Kaiser and Trimby develop. Yeah,
I think that's why people were criticizing the messaging, because like to us, we were saying like, we think Mikyx is a better player than Advian. Like right now, he is just a better support player. But then the messaging was like, he needs the winning mentality. And that kind of sounds like he's going to come in and be like imparting, like be like kind of like a team leader in a way and try to like refocus the team, which is what we were saying was like, not the way that we see Mikyx. Mikyx always seemed like the quiet guy on the team that was like going to just like deliver and just like be really fucking good at his role. So that I think that was the other part of the messaging that we were like criticized. That's why we always joke around the winning mentality, where it's like, I mean, did Adrian want to lose? Or
that's where you might be really surprised, because I had a very similar thought of Mikyx, that he was going to be the introverted, quiet guy. He loves his anime. He's a support player, usually very gentle people, and he is gentle, but he is the social bee of the team. He is the extrovert of the team. Yes, exactly. You're like, what? This is not the Mikyx that I know of.
Yeah.
He's the guy that's talking to other teams. He's playing board games, organizing poker nights with teammates, other teams, going to other houses, partying. He is like kind of like the Joker a bit of the team. Not necessarily Joker, but he is like the social energy of the team. And that winning mentality, I do think it's there, and I think it showed a lot in interviews, because if you're a player in Excel, like let's say you're a Patrick or a YoungBuck, you're kind of getting conditioned to just wanting that fucking 6th place at all costs.
Yeah, of course.
Mickey from the start went out and said, we're going to make top 3. We're a top 3 team. Even shortly before playoffs, out in the interviews, we need to make top 3. We need to be strong for Worlds, etc. These are not messages that other players were carrying, and this is something that Mickey did bring to the team, and he was genuine about it. So, so I think the winning mentality was more of championship qualities. But it turns out that he has this really striving, ambitious mentality still, and he's really instilling that as well into the other players.
That must be a crazy thing. Like YoungBuck is like, our goal is 6th place, guys. Like starts the fucking meeting and Mikyx is like top three or fucking doesn't matter. Like Jesus, okay, interesting.
Wait, along those lines, it's obviously a loaded fucking alley-oop of a question, but I'll do it anyway, YoungBuck. You didn't have Mikyx at the beginning of the split, so for you, it's an obvious reason why it's going to be exciting to run back the roster for summer, potentially, right? You get to actually see from the beginning. Because if people don't know, actually, XL was in a little bit of a hole when they signed Mikyx, even in the LEC. So the turnaround, like realistically, if you'd have had Mikyx from the beginning of the split and he could have played like this, you would have been contended with G2 and Misfits for the 3rd or 4th spot, right? You were right there. You were only a couple of games behind.
Yeah, we lost to BDS in the first week, and we lost to Misfits in the second week, and then we lost to Mad Lions in Mickey's first game, where we kind of had a troll draft for Mickey as well. I calculate, and a lot of the Baron throws, but I think that's actually just gameplay mistakes, so I can't say that we deserve to win those games. Okay. So it's like, we can get 11 or 12 wins in a good split, like, we can get there. So yeah, I am really hyped to run it back. I also felt that just throughout the series against Vitality, I got to know some of the players better in what they can and cannot do, and what they do and do excel at, pun not intended. So I feel like everyone in Excel is also like quite positive going into the summer split, because that 3rd spot is so open for grabs. Is Rogue gonna choke again? Is FNATIC gonna have problems?
I don't think can get it. I think BDS is too rough, but yeah. No.
Good one. Is FNATIC gonna implode? Is G2 gonna be as strong as they were in the last few series? Is the meta gonna be still like not so AD carry focused as it was prior? I think all the top 5 teams actually feel that they have a shot at Worlds, and so do we in Excel.
I mean, I would assume also like just the getting the weight off you of like the whole fucking vibe of the org was, well, never made playoffs. Finally making playoffs is probably like free you guys up a little bit to, you know, achieve more than that. It's like you cleared that hurdle. Now you can look at the bigger goals.
Yeah, it's a nice base, 5th place, and now we never go lower than that. And I think we believe that we can do that.
Right. Another thing I also like about doing episodes when the split's over and it's going to be weeks and weeks till we get to the next split, it'll be totally different patches, is you can also ask questions that sort of reveal things about the meta that won't be the meta in summer. So the question I have, one of the last questions about XL is this. What was your thoughts overall on Marcoon in the split, YoungBuck? Because my problem is this. When he was on his champions, looked pretty good. He was one of the better junglers. It looked like he could be pinched in the draft, though.
I think he could. That is one of the things that we really have to take into mind for the next split, and it already started happening during the regular split, and I don't know if it was really like a long-term fix that we had for the playoffs, but at some point, you know, teams are going to ban Xin Zhao or lose the game, and then we would fall back on Lee Sin, and we would probably win the game, but what happens after that was quite the question mark, and that is not a pun intended again. And one thing that I want to see from Mark is that he became really good on Jarvan in practice, but then he had one stage game where he was like, okay, I'm going to play the Jarvan again after losing 3 stage games on it, I believe. He misexecuted a little bit, but he actually showed that he was really improved on it, and he's like, I don't want to play Jarvan anymore, so I want him back on the Jarvan. He played a lot of Volibear last season and was really good on it. This was like our bread and butter mid-jungle Volibear Lucian kind of stuff. We didn't really play much Volibear, or enough Volibear going into the playoffs, so I think there's a few band-aids there, but I think on the long term, like, he needs to be more confident in his champion pool, because he was actually someone that I considered a hidden MVP for our team. Okay. He's the main shot caller, basically. He shot called most of our wins in the middle of the split. So I felt like he was very underrated for that aspect of gameplay.
By the way, Dom, Taylor's oldest time. The coach wants the jungler to play Jarvan. The jungler knows what the champion Jarvan's like, doesn't want to play him like the story in League of Legends history before.
I would say you could ask Peter Zhang about this, who was my coach in season 5, but I think he's like in hiding right now. So okay. Yeah, I'll just give you my word that this was the current.
As the years go on, Dom, you actually come looking out of that season 5 team looking better and better. Season 4 looking better and better and better. Everyone else is just looking terrible. Piglet, he's just gone off the reservation. Peter Zan, Phoenix, like, you're actually the only one who holds up there. Quaz was mental, apparently. Like, fucking hell, was there anyone in that team? You were probably the same one, and we all thought you were the Rager.
Look, all I'm saying is those videos. I always respected that you had my back, Thorin. You're always the one that would like come out and you'd like make the videos that were like, this guy is actually fucking good. So I respect that you had my back. But yeah, I mean, I think the the situation speaks for itself. Like, it was fucking rough. There's a reason why I decided to stream a little bit after that season. I had enough of the pro play.
Exactly. And all I'm going to say is you were like, you know what? Hey, what's your name? Dardock. You have a go. And we also worked out for him, didn't we? So
no, I love that. I said this during Breaking Point. I love that Dardock was really fucking good because it made me have like zero regrets. I'm like, that season Dardock was like MVP caliber to me. I'm like,
yeah.
Like, even if I played like that, we still would have fucking lost.
Yes.
Like, so I mean, I think I dipped out at the right time for that organization for sure.
One last question I have, YoungBuck, before we wrap the show is this. People are saying, and this is spicy as fuck, because you think of some of the rosters, G2's just won. You'd think they'd keep the same roster. FNATIC has a mega super team on paper. Rogue looked awesome. Vitality, can they even change a player? But what we've heard is this, though. I'm hearing rumours, YoungBuck, that there might be a whole bunch of roster changes coming in between the splits before summer. So all I want to ask is this. Do you either have any rumours you can give us, or do you have anyone you think should make a change? Is it what can you say in that regard? Because I haven't got any like solid info I can give. It's just like vague rumors I've heard.
My rumors are very vague, so don't put any weight on them. But I heard that Mad Lions might make a change.
Okay.
And I heard that FNATIC or Vitality might make one of them might sign someone from another team, like a S tier player for S tier player type of deal.
Wow.
But these are really vague. I'm not in the gossip scene enough, so take that with a grain of salt.
Fair enough. What do you think, Dom?
I've heard a couple of rumors. I mean, I just want to see what happens. I don't know if Niski will decide to keep on streaming. I don't know if he might have some anger issues, potentially be mad, or if he'll just excel through things. So we'll see how things are actually going to go for some of the players. That's all I got.